Guys, we had a monumental interview with Cristiano Ronaldo. We got part one yesterday with Piers Morgan. Part two,
Boo.
part two was today.
Boo.
And I would like to start from the beginning. I take real notes here. You know what I mean? I got a whole
You can
page,
read them.
and I got a whole another page in part two. But just to like start it out, Piers asked him like why he's doing the interview. He was like, it's time, and he said, "I like you."
That was the first red flag. He said he liked Piers Morgan.
I had a couple red
That's
flags.
that's literally
That's
my
definitely a
first
red flag.
note.
Yeah.
Okay,
My first note
Someone
is
says they like
Ronaldo
Piers
likes
Morgan.
Piers.
That's a red flag.
all right. I think he mentioned early that fans are the most important thing in football. Maybe that was also a red flag for Holly.
No.
I'm joking. So I kind of like the most like the first like impactful thing I'll say was that he talked about how it was close for him to go to Man City, but he said that he has a lot of love for Manchester United and he doesn't regret going to Manchester United. And he said that he asked Sir Alex Ferguson, and Sir Alex Ferguson was like, "You better goddamn not go to City." Go to City. What you guys think about that?
I mean, like, to be honest, which I guess we'll get to this later on because it was mentioned a few times in the interview, the second part, but I personally would always have assumed that Ronaldo was like a money guy. So I thought, oh, City, well, they'll be one of the only ones other than United that could afford him. So it did seem realistic to me. The fact that he didn't go because of loyalty, I mean, cool, thanks. I mean, personally, okay, it's funny though, because if he did go to City, I would have totally called him a traitor. But because even if he came to United, I'm just like, whatever. I prefer neither, but if I had to choose, it was yeah, it was
It was a lose-lose for him for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I mean, he did admit that it was very, very close. And like
Yeah.
it was only within a matter of a couple of days, which makes sense because I think everyone was kind of shocked by the fact that he actually did come to United.
I think he mentioned that he talked to Pep too.
Yeah, he talked to Pep and then most importantly, like Ferguson, which probably maybe sealed the deal or made really set his mind up. But
Caesar, what do you think? Would you like to see him at City?
I was like, damn, what a mistake that was. Being loyal, Jesus. It cost you so much. It probably would have been an entirely different situation for him completely.
Right now, yeah.
He went like I like, he would have went to, instead of being like what, 3 coaches and in 2 seasons, he would have had the same coach, probably would have won, probably had a good time. I don't know. Damn. But I mean, it did kind of speak to a lot of the stuff he's kind of always kind of preached, about how much Alex Ferguson meant to him and etc. So it makes sense. And I remember at the time him going to Man City, I remember us talking about it. It seemed like a lock. And then it was making me question like some of the reporting because I'm like, what? And then he even said it in there. He's like, yeah, last minute, basically, I had a conversation with Ferguson. I've talked to Pep, and then Ferguson was like, you better not go there. And he was like, all right, bet. Like, I mean, that speaks to loyalty. I mean, he's always, even when he was at Real Madrid, he spoke really highly of Man U and the Man U fans. And I remember there'd be games where they would still like do Ronaldo chants while they were playing. So that's kind of consistent. That was like a consistent thing that I would expect to have heard when he did. I expect all the things he says about Man U fans and Man U stuff. Like I expect that. Like that's nothing that's like shocking to me at all.
Yeah, for sure. It would have been kind of ugly to see him there, for sure. But he went to Man U and he got to play with he got to play with the best center forward ever. Maybe he got to play with maybe probably the best athlete of all time, Edinson Cavani. Like he got to play with Cavani, so like that's probably the thing that actually Sir Alex Ferguson was like, dude, don't you want to go play with Cavani? Like, what's wrong with you?
I don't think Sam's ever said the word Cavani in his life.
Okay, see,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so then it started to get a little bit spicy.
Mm.
They started to talk about the state of the club. And he mentioned that he was surprised that a lot of things were the same at the club as they were 13 years ago. He said nothing's changed since 2009 in regards to the infrastructure. He talked about like the pool, the jacuzzi, the kitchen, but he did shout out the kitchen staff.
I thought that was cute.
Yeah. He said that Man U was behind in a lot of ways, and he said there was like zero progress compared to teams that he had been on, like Real Madrid and Juventus. So, Holly, how did you feel hearing that part?
Honestly, that wasn't surprising to me at all. I think it's pretty obvious that like United are behind on a lot of things. Whether that's, maybe we're not aware of like the infrastructure, the training grounds and stuff, but the fact that he said nothing has changed in 13 years doesn't surprise me. I think they're behind on a lot of things, like back of the house, like on the pitch, the way things are run. It even goes down to, I've always thought like the way their website, have you ever gone on Manchester United's website? It is
Never.
hideous. It is horrendous.
It's so true.
It's like it's a terrible website. It's just awful.
Right now.
Like it's just everything that is run by Manchester United is very outdated. So
how did you feel about him calling it out publicly?
I don't know. I don't think it should really be a surprise to anyone.
I mean, I was surprised. I mean, I wouldn't I feel like we've seen in the past 10 years and some change, like countries like Spain and Italy have a big financial crises, and England didn't really suffer the way that those countries did. And also EPL has only raised its profile. So I'm kind of shocked that Man U is lagging behind in things like that. I would expect that they'd be at the forefront. I've seen them players at Real Madrid in preseason having some contraption on their chest, running, doing some like fitness training. Like it seems like, because he mentioned technology too, like it seems like Man U is not doing none of that, and it kind of shows in the way they play.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I didn't like obviously I'm not surprised by those, but I'm not surprised in looking at their performances, dating back to basically when he left, like their results and like what just basically all they've really done is what Europa League. That one season is kind of a major trophy they won. And this drought they've been having, it's like, yeah, when you line it up, it makes a lot of sense. But I guess I am surprised that I'm surprised the fact that they don't have that stuff because of how much money they have. They have like they're always like top ranked every season, like most richest club, second most richest club, third most richest club, the most richest club. Like every season, I'm always seeing them in that top 3, top 4. So it's disappointing and more actually alarming that they don't have that stuff. It makes you want to wonder why there's so much conversation about Glazers wanting to sell the team and blah blah blah. It's like there's going to be a lot of eyeballs there because it's like, what are you doing with the money now? And maybe all the times those fans were saying that the Glazers have been pocketing money or not reinvesting back in the club as much as they should be, kind of resonates with what's going on then. So yeah,
Holly, as a fan, like how does that make you feel as a Manchester United fan?
I mean, like you said, you'd expect a club like Manchester United to have the top technology, the top facilities, like that's just like, how can you not? And yeah, it goes like they have the money, they have the anything they would need, like the profile, the everything, but they're just not putting the effort into that. And it shows. They haven't won anything in a couple years now. They haven't really done to, like, it's never, there's past few seasons are they're not impressive. Like the signings, sure, like they still are able, that's the only thing they've really been able to do is still kind of maintain the reputation of getting like big names, still not like what it was, or like top tier players in their prime. Like they're kind of getting players that are slowly weaning out and only gonna have a couple years left on them. So I don't
I
know.
wonder. I thought about it. I was like, damn. I remember when Harry came to Man U was like a big rumor, and I wonder if he was like, "Look, I play on Tottenham. We got better shit than they do." Like he probably was like, I heard about what y'all got going on up there.
And you know, as players, like word like that spreads around. So I'm sure maybe we
Absolutely.
don't really know, but I'm sure players and agents have talked to each other, or players have gone to tour and ability like look at the facilities and like, what the hell? Like,
It's embarrassing, honestly. It's
no,
embarrassing.
it's like that's like a bad, that's like a pretty bad thing. That's like oh, it's
Mhm.
not like man, like like it's just we're doing the best we can. Like no, like that's bad. It shows misappropriation with funds. It shows that
It sounds. We'll talk about the Glazers in the part two,
for
but it
sure.
does sound corrupt
No,
almost.
like
Oh,
no, that
yeah,
actually sounds like
100%.
legitimate because that's how what happens with corruption, right? Like,
Yeah,
that things aren't being things are like distributed in a way to please people on the outside, but when you see a lack of like proper funding and infrastructure, then you're like, like where's the rest of that money going then? Because we want to know. So yeah,
yeah, exactly. Then after that, they were talking about the coaching situations in part one. I think I'll just say this real fast. I think me and Caesar both in the part one, there was like nothing that was said that was like out of line or out of pocket, in my opinion. And Holly,
Uh,
you would agree?
I agree. Yeah,
Okay.
part one was pretty civil.
Yeah.
yeah.
Even though I mean it was a little spicy, but
It
but
was, yeah.
he talked about
I
them
like
bringing
the word symbol.
he talked about them bringing in Ralph Ragnick. He said he
Oh
was
yeah.
surprised. He said that nobody really heard of him, and
Which
that
is false.
I, I never heard of him, but like I don't know everybody. Um,
Okay. I mean, I thought he was like, obviously he's not up there. I just like I'd heard the name, and like I don't follow like sporting directors, so like I just thought it was he was a bit more well known. Like if but if Ronaldo apparently didn't know him and Piers Morgan didn't know him, but who cares what he thinks?
well, I think there was a lot of shock in the football world for
For
sure
sure.
when he
Yeah.
Mhm.
came. But Ronaldo said, he said like he was kind of confused by it, but he said that he was respectful. Um, he said that he mentioned that he played for some of the best coaches, and he said he mentioned Zidane, Ancelotti, Mourinho, Fernando Santos, and Allegri, which I thought was really cute.
Yeah.
They talked about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and Ronaldo said that he did a good job, that he needed more time, and he said that he loved him.
Yeah.
Holly, you heard that part? Were you kind of like, oh, a little bit?
Yeah, no, I'm glad that he respected at least like OGS. I mean, it could be because of the history and stuff like that, and he knows like I guess they both have love for the club and stuff, so it's probably just like a mutual like, it could be Ronaldo in that position. I hope it's not in the future, but like technically I guess it could be.
I think
But it was nice. It was
a
nice to
terrible coach. He'd be a terrible coach.
I know.
He didn't know what he was doing.
Um,
um, I thought the same. I thought that the OGS shout out was cool because it kind of is consistent with what Ronaldo said throughout the interview about how he feels when he like talks to former players or teammates. Like he kind of feels like you're like that whole like it is with athletes. Like it's like once you played together and you like had success or whatever. There's like almost like
a fraternity in a lot of
there's a
ways.
fraternity
Yeah.
aspect. So that's why I think you can tell. Well, obviously I don't want to skip ahead, but how he feels about other people's comments. But so with that, Ole, I thought that was really cool. Because I never thought he was like horrible either. I was a little. I also was surprised by the Ralph hiring because I had to do Googling for that. And then also like I was really uncomfortable with how like much of like that how Ralph was like handling some of the player stuff, a lot of the public comments he would make in the media, and how he would discuss players and like I remember he made a weird comment one time too about players like style or something or tattoos. I was like, I don't know what's going on here, but okay. So I never really liked the guy, and obviously it showed the result that it didn't really work out with anybody feeling him either. So yeah, that was when I thought it was like turned up a little bit when they got to those questions. I was like, okay, here we go.
I think probably all of us, we were seeing like a lot of the headlines from before the interview came out. And so I was expecting him to just like shooting heaters at everybody.
Me
yeah.
too. I
Yeah.
thought it was about to be like he was about to just go in like a ether, like he was.
I
Gonna
thought
just
it was about
stand
to
up
be
and
like,
everybody, yeah.
Hit 'Em Up by Tupac. I thought
Yeah,
he was
they're gonna play the hit 'em up beat in the background.
but he mentioned all those coaches he played for, and to my knowledge, Caesar, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he have some friction with Mourinho while he was at
He
Real
did.
Madrid?
He had friction with Mourinho, but like years later, they had both made comments saying that like they're like respect each other. It was just like
Okay.
it was just a disagreement, and because
Yeah.
Ronaldo felt weird about Higuain and stuff like that, it was like a disagreement how he felt tactically. But they showed respect later on afterwards. They have the same agent too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was respectful calling out all those coaches, and he even
But they
mentioned
had heat when they
Allegri,
played, yeah, for sure. I mean, when he was the coach of the team, yeah.
and then he even mentioned Allegri, and then like what he was saying about OGS, it was like you could easily just be like, yeah, it was fine or whatever, but you could tell there was some genuine affection there between them two.
Yeah.
Then it got a little even more spicy, maybe. He was talking about the younger players. He said that the younger players don't care as much and they don't have the same hunger and they haven't suffered the way like some of the older players have, I guess he's saying.
That's
He
so
said
boomer.
he said that it's weird that they don't try to emulate top players. And he said that he did that with, and he mentioned he went down the line. He said he would emulate Van Nistelrooy, Rio Ferdinand, Roy Keane, and Giggs. And he said that that's why he's been so successful. I would imagine Holly hearing those names, he's showing love to those legends of Man U. You're probably like a little bit. Were you like, oh, a little bit about Ronaldo when he was doing that or no?
No, I don't think I didn't go awe in any part of the video. I mean, like
Okay.
it's I mean, okay, mine is like there's parts that you definitely do feel for him in this interview and in general. But I mean, I guess I agree. I see where he's coming from in the sense that like some of the younger players aren't working as hard as him.
Well, let me continue. He said that he doesn't try to give advice to the younger players as much as he tries to be an example. He mentioned he's the first to arrive at training and the last to leave. But I wrote there, you're not the last to leave them games all the time. But then he mentioned, like Piers asked him, who are some of the players he likes their mentality. He mentioned Dalot and Martinez, like some of the younger players. He mentioned Dalot and Martinez. And he mentioned Casemiro, but he was like, but he is a little bit older. But he also said in regards to the younger players that you can't blame them because he said it's just different now, like as compared to how he grew up. And I think also there is a perception about Ronaldo. I think I know for sure I've had to tell people, and I'm sure Caesar has too, like there's a perception about him that like because of how he looks, that like he came from some like wealthy background or something like that. And he came from the gutter, too. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, but I feel like his dad was probably abusive. You know, I mean, he's a war veteran in a colonial war in Africa.
Supposed to be an alcoholic too.
Yeah, I think he died. He drank himself to death. His son started getting in millions. He was like, now I can buy all the liquor I want. I'm trying to get Caesar laugh.
I'm not gonna fall for this.
But like he didn't come from some like privileged background by any means. And I would imagine him seeing the young players like starting off with a lot. I think we can all tell like some of the young players in any club, they don't have the same drive.
No.
You know, like you can tell, like I look at who's the guy I always talk about on Chelsea? Kai Havertz. I'm like, this fool look like he do not care, dude. Like he's so Gen Z. He's just like, yeah, I'm good enough to play. Like it's fine. Yeah. But I don't know, Holly. Like, did you feel like he was sneak dissing Rashford?
Okay,
Is
Rashford's
he
known
young?
to like stay back in training and practice all that
Yeah,
stuff.
lifting dumbbells, getting buff.
And then
Is he young?
all those freaking
25 now, right? 24? He's not one of the young guys.
I know. Well, he was also talking about Casemiro though, so I don't know what his
True. His age range is wild.
yeah. I don't know who. I think he's just talking about anyone younger than him at this point.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah, like I could definitely see it, but I think times are changed, and like I said, that's very like boomer thing to say. Like, oh, these kids don't work as hard these days. Like,
But do you agree?
I mean, maybe. Like maybe I just think the game has changed and like you'd say like a younger player back in the 90s working hard is like being tough and like roughing it out and like I don't know. I think the game has changed. So like there's different ways to work hard. I guess it
Yeah, you can work hard on TikTok. Your followers up.
Yeah.
Caesar, what do you think? What do you think about him saying that?
I thought I was kind of annoyed by it until he said, I thought like annoyed by it in terms of like I don't really like that kind of comments from players to talk about other players and other youth players because I think that's better addressed in private with youth players and like in your team. I think it's better addressed that way, not like an interview. But I really like that what he said was like it's not their fault, like it's the difference in now with like technology and stuff. I thought that was a great point because I think that's the root of the issue when it comes to a lot of like if you talk about young players and that drive or whatever, it's the access of technology of soccer has expanded so much worldwide that that whole like survival of the fittest mentality that a lot of the younger players who come from nothing or come from different backgrounds get through to get to the top level. That's at that's not as much going on as much because even in those areas they have such that access to technology. So that's why I think you're not really like, I think if you keep it real, like we probably see a lot of players with potential, but we don't see a lot of like high number of established young talent. Like we're seeing players that like can definitely get to that point, but we're at 1 or 2, whatever. So I don't know, like, Man U gets a lot of young players and it seems like a pipeline where these guys come in and out. And I do kind of agree with him when he talked about the longevity and stuff of these players too, these young players. I feel like it's going to be hindered. He mentioned that too.
He did say that if like basically because they aren't trying to emulate the top players, that they won't last that long. Like they probably fizzle out early.
Yeah, I mean, also let's keep it real. The biggest thing he also credits a lot of like he does credit of his social media presence, but a lot of these young players are so involved in social media that I think that also affects like them at a young level. They think that with this having in their back pocket and their growth on there, it embodies them as a player. Yeah. When really, I think it's the inverse. I think that your play is gonna emulate that. So, yeah, I liked it I liked what he said when he mentioned it's not their fault. It's also the access technology. I think that's much more fair because you can't really blame players for having this mentality when it's literally thrown and forced upon them at a young age. Like, what are you supposed to do? Oh, I don't get this away from me. Get this chest heart rate monitor away from me. I can do it the hard way. Like that's goofy. Like they're going to use everything that's given to them as a tool.
Well, I think also like you do see some like we've seen the young player who has that kind of like drive. We saw Mbappe. We've seen Mbappe come up.
It's still going to happen. I mean, but look at Xavi Simons. Like they were doing like $1 million transfers for him to switch academy to academy. Like this is a different era. So it's like
for sure.
Come on, yo. Like he's obviously he's going to be a little strange.
Yeah. No, I think that I think that
that's a nice way to say it.
We've seen there's a lot of money and a lot of attention. Mm-hmm. And when you're young, that's like dangerous. But I feel like you will see some young players who like their number one focus is the game.
We have a question for you, Ben.
We even seen it like with Vinicius Jr., huh?
I have a question for you. Is it different in terms of the players? Are the players different, or because we have so much more access to exposure, players are getting more credit than they would in the past?
What do you mean by credit?
Like you know how like people always talk about all the talent on these players, like so much more talented young players and whatever. Is it that there's so much more younger talented players, or we just have much more resources to see these players than we did before? Because maybe if we switch eras, they would have just been kind of like those dudes we don't hear about anyways.
Caesar, one of the worst things about soccer in general is that it's highlight culture.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people that are like trying to watch a whole game and really judge a player on a whole game. So yeah, if you see a dude like, you know, his 2 things they did in a game or 3 things, and it's like, oh damn, that's crazy. But it's like, yeah, you watch the whole game, like they're not really that active, you know?
No, for sure.
So yeah, I think it's that for sure. Like you can have
that's the technology I think that's affecting them.
Yeah, it's like a short
culture.
Yeah, it's a short clip on something.
Yeah.
But also like from a media standpoint, yeah, there's a lot of people who are lazy and they don't want to do the work.
No.
But let's get to the part where Holly was laughing. He talked about the tragedies that he went through. No, I don't know if you guys want to talk about that or you want to skip it because Caesar's laughing now. Jeez,
no, because you're mean, dog.
Holly hates him. I don't know how much he hates him.
Okay,
dog.
Okay, like there's, I mean, I don't think there's much to say on it other than it was very sad that like, I mean, for us to discuss, like it was very hard. Stop, give me those looks. I'm getting all flushed. It was like, no, that's a very sad thing.
Which part was sad?
The loss of his child.
Okay.
And, you know, the fact that he really did take next to no time off. And, you know, that's never easy to go through. I mean, I don't know personally, obviously, but like that would be a nightmare for anyone. So,
yeah.
And I don't know, the fact that what happened during preseason resulting in him not joining the team, and the fact that, you know, apparently the higher ups weren't believing him, like that's if, you know, that's pretty sad. The fact, like, it's preseason. So like, you know, you feel for him in those sense. That was like I don't want to say it wasn't like a heartwarming part of the interview, but you know, it was like, it did make you really feel for him and like give you that perspective of where he was kind of coming from.
Yeah, he mentioned he thanked the English fans. They were really supportive. I remember the Liverpool fans that singing "You'll Never Walk Alone," and he did have a lot of. I think he said the Queen, like the royal family, sent him a letter, and he mentioned that he has a little kind of altar for the kids' ashes and his dad's ashes.
Yeah, he says he has chapel.
He has a chapel.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, like I thought it was humanizing a moment for him. I think, especially with mega celebrities, he reinforced the point that he's like, people forget I'm human too. I did think the preseason thing was kind of strange because out of all the criticisms you can have of Ronaldo, I never thought anybody would have like a criticism of his like dedication to being professional or like trying to show up and play, or like Paul. I never saw him as like trying to like skirt by things. I never seen him as that dude. Like, and like he wasn't like flying to Brazil to hang out with his sister or nothing. So, you know, it's you know, that's not how I saw Ronaldo. Maybe other people, but so yeah, I mean, once again, like, you know, we only have so much access to information on the outside. So, you know, I thought it was cool. He talked about that, and it was really sad to hear about, you know, his child, and obviously, you know, his daughter being sick as well too. And it screams toxic work behavior when your employer doesn't believe your reasons for not being able to come into the office, and it involving your child. It screams real toxic, bad work behavior.
Yeah, he talked about his partner Georgina.
Or conditions, sorry.
He talked about her like really helping him get through that situation. He kind of hinted at her not having like the best upbringing either. She's from Argentina. And then Pierce asked him when are the wedding bells happening, and he was a little iffy about that.
Yeah.
He was.
He was like, hey, dog, hey.
He's like, I have financials. No.
He was like, we want prenup.
He kept calling her wife on accident too. I was like, what's going on here, dog?
Yeah, he didn't even be like, oh, girlfriend.
He
They've probably
that,
been
yeah.
married. They've probably been married.
But
Piers was on his fanboy tip. Oh my god,
it was a little bit weird.
Jesus.
But Caesar, you
Too
said
much.
something. Caesar, you said something too, like when you're talking about the outside world. He talked about all the negativity in the media, and to be honest with you, like I don't really care that much. But we have had episodes before Holly got here. She wouldn't let us get away with it. But we're like, it seemed like the media is like bullying him to some extent. It's like they're just like fishing for any negative headline about him. When I'm like, no, there's like nothing going on here, dude. Like, and I can't really remember those times necessarily. It was a while ago, but sometimes it's overkill. I said, like, he's a big player, he's the number one guy, so for sure he's going to get criticized. That's going to affect him personally. It doesn't affect me personally. But as a consumer, I'm like, dude, can we find something else to talk about sometimes? Because it just gets played out. And I think that I didn't listen to anybody's commentary on the clips because I haven't seen anything about the actual interview yet. But just based on like the thumbnails, like they're going off, and I don't, especially in this first part, like there was nothing to be like going off about, like nothing. So he does get unfairly criticized from that perspective, but I don't really empathize with it that much because it's like, yeah, that's just what happens
because of territory.
But at the same time, like that's like Piers Morgan and his team releasing those like fire clips that everyone thought would be like that was going to be the whole 90-minute interview. It was just going to be
true.
So like he's doing the same thing, like the clickbaity
he's a scumbag. He's a scumbag.
He really is. Like, oh my, like he was so annoying during that interview. I can't believe I watched both of them for that long. But
no, Piers Morgan's garbage.
Well, they talked about. Well, speaking of the criticism, they talked about Wayne Rooney being critical of Ronaldo, and Gary Neville, and it seemed like Ronaldo was kind of like he was bothered by it. He was kind of saying how these are my former teammates, so I don't know like why they would do this. But he did also mention that Wayne Rooney kids were at his house. And that
like 6 months ago.
Yeah, and the Ronaldo son went to Wayne Rooney's house and played. I'm like, damn, dog.
That is kind of cold, I'm not gonna lie.
Like, he was just over here.
You were just over here breaking bread at the crib.
Like, he's saying that in my face, though. but I will say this. I think Ronaldo takes a lot of the stuff really personal. When I think like, when you're leaving games early and things like that, like I think someone like Wayne Rooney is talking about either like your performance or like you doing things like that. Ronaldo, in my opinion, it seems like Ronaldo's taking it like you shouldn't say nothing about me when you're a former teammate, and I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that Ronaldo, he does have points where he sort of recognizes where he did what he did was wrong, but I think he takes things personal that former players have said. But it's like no matter if I'm a former player, whatever, former teammates, I'm allowed to be critical of things tactically, exactly. And I can also be critical, especially if like we're boys. Like I could be critical of you dipping on the field early. Like
your behavior.
That's absolutely called for because that if we were back in the this wouldn't be happening. You didn't do that back then either. So like, yeah, I think that's fair. I think that he needs to like separate that and like because that kind of stuff is like you're just making things more difficult for yourself and creating unnecessary stress on something where it's like, yeah, like, like you're right. Like I messed up, but like, just, I don't want you to really, it just kind of felt like the conversation be like, I kind of felt messed up when you talked on me like that, but I understand like you're in the right to talk about that because I was wrong. Like that should be the approach, not really the approach he had. And that was like, kind of like, that's when some of the parts of the interview, I was just like, it screams a lot to like the kind of mentality you have as like a player and like where you're at. Like
he's sensitive. He's sensitive.
he's sensitive, and he's the kind of person, especially where he came from, where it's like he's putting all this stuff on his shoulders to like motivate and get angry and take it personal. It's like you don't need to do that. You're 38. Let's chill out. Yeah.
Same with like what Neville said. I don't think Neville said anything wrong or like inaccurate. He was talking about how a player of his caliber shouldn't be, storming off. Like, yeah, exactly. It's like it's
true.
not exactly. It's not wrong. It wasn't. It's not offensive. It's, it was quite accurate. But yeah.
Ronaldo emphasizes that he's not the person that does speeches or advice. He lets like his game and his worth ethic speak to being that role model. Well, you're also allowed to be criticized for when you have moments where that's not being a role model. Like, what kind of example do you set when you do stuff like that to the young players in your teams, like Garnacho, when you're just dipping? Like, that's a bad example. It shows that you've become bigger than a club, and it shouldn't be like that when you're like, in those situations as a team player.
For sure.
Yeah, one of my notes is even the best players deserve to be penalized if they, do something like that.
Absolutely.
Like, sure, a 3-game suspension is maybe too much. Yeah, but like, like you can't be getting away with that stuff just because of your profile or, legacy stuff like that. So,
last thing I'll say about part 1 is that towards the end, he did say, and I would imagine Holly liked this too. He said Roy Keane was his best captain ever.
Damn, disrespecting Sergio Ramos. I'm playing.
And he said that Rio Ferdinand helped him a lot and was his neighbor.
I know him and Rio Ferdinand was super tight.
They were, Rio still,
they got the same complexion.
Yeah, they're both Africans.
Exactly. Holly, did you feel Roy Keane my best captain ever? You wasn't like, oh yeah.
I felt that.
I mean, your favorite person is what's his name though?
Paul Scholes.
No. What's that?
Lingard?
No.
Her favorite is Lingard.
No. The forward, the Dutch guy. What's his name again? I forgot.
Robin van Persie.
Yeah, you like Robin van Persie. You don't like these old guys.
No.
The Van Persie was that's a handsome baller right there.
Do you feel the same affection for like these older guys, or not really?
To be honest, not really. Not as much.
Damn.
Like, the respect is there, and you know what they did, but
thought you was really about it.
Who was the Japanese player they had?
Who?
Man, you
had a Korean guy.
Oh, who's the Korean player they had?
Park.
He was a baller. No love for Park out there in this interview. Damn.
We had a whole thing about Park. Where they used to they sing that song about him.
That's the one you talk about him.